Hello, everyone. I'm Keith the Stone, and it's HeroesX office hours again. This is V13 of HeroesX, and I'm here, as always, with Greg Naj and Sarah and Janet and Aylin. And we are going to talk about the responses to the Hour 9 discussion question, which is as follows. It's a long one, and it's written in the voice of Greg. So when I say I, just be aware of the subtleties going on here and the awkwardness as I'm reading this question too, Greg. When I was a PhD student at Harvard, so that was true for me too, but so many years ago, okay, now we're talking about Greg. I once heard something most striking from my old teacher, John H. Finley. He was a stellar professor of ancient Greek literature. Odysseus, he said in one of his lectures, gets a good press only in the Odyssey. Well, he was certainly right in implying that Odysseus gets a bad press in ancient Greek traditions situated outside our Odyssey. That is to say, he is an incorrigible trickster, as anthropologists would say it, and he tends to violate social norms. Perhaps he can violate even moral norms. I cannot disagree with such formulations, but my question here is heading in a different direction. Can we say that Odysseus gets bad press even in our Odyssey? So we do have several responses here. What are folks saying?
Well, one participant has three related questions. At the beginning of the Odyssey, is it clear that Athena is angry with the Achaeans? Why don't we learn what Odysseus did that was so terrible? And what really happened at Troy?
Wow, that's such a big question. And one of the answers is we are not told. And what I mean is that the one big sin, quote unquote, that Odysseus committed against Athena is the stealing of the Palladium. That is to say, the simulacrum of Athena that was guarding the citadel of Troy. Even the idea of the Palladium, as it's called in Latin, not to mention the word Palladion, or again, to say it in Virgilian Latin, Palladium, is absent from the Iliad and from the Odyssey. There is no reference anywhere to the stealing of this sacred object that guarded the Trojan citadel by Odysseus with Diomedes as partner in crime. And I mean crime. Athena has every reason to be angry at that, but our Homeric Iliad and the Odyssey don't even mention that act. I would say the closest we come to it in some ways is that word hieron, which we translate as sacred, applied to Troy at the very beginning of the Odyssey, where we hear that Odysseus is the one who gets credit for destroying the sacred citadel of Troy, the hieron ptoliathron of Troy. Why is it sacred? Because it's sacred to Athena. And our Odyssey tends to highlight zones of the plot where Athena is a patroness of Odysseus, and it tends to shade over zones where Athena was offended by Odysseus. I'm sorry for that long-winded response to a very important question.
One of the participants pointed out the relationship between Odysseus and Penelope. Odysseus wants to go back home. He wants to be reunited with his son. Penelope is circumspect. Odysseus has similar mental powers. The relationship between Penelope and Odysseus is not a negative one, or
no.
So can we say the good press is this relationship in Odyssey, in the Odyssey?
I could say that, and if I say that, or when I say that, I would have to say that Odysseus owes his good press to Penelope. You notice how I hedge. It's not just that he owes the good press. You could say he has Penelope to thank for the good press. I don't want to fast forward too much. I know that our participants must be exhausted after finishing, maybe for the first time ever, the Iliad. That's a very tough and challenging mental exercise. And we're only starting the Odyssey, but if you will allow me to fast forward to Odyssey 24, Agamemnon, or shall I say the ghost of Agamemnon speaking from the dead, declares formally that Odysseus has Penelope to thank for his, may I say, glory, or the glory that is his because of the plot of the Odyssey. And that conversely, Agamemnon has his wife, Clytemnestra, to blame. Well, I would say he should blame himself as well, but at least that's what he says, that he has his wife to blame, by contrast with Penelope, for having betrayed him. Something that, of course, Penelope did not do in our Odyssey, not even close, and that is betraying Odysseus. I am sort of happy with my answers to the first two concerns raised by the participants, but I'm also unhappy because my answers give only a very incomplete picture. The Odyssey is such a complex work of verbal art that we're still only scratching the surface. Let's have some more reactions from participants, because I certainly have not said the last word.
Yeah. One participant has focused a little bit on the how is this sort of tainted reputation going to be cleansed? And when we've talked before about how in the Iliad, we've talked quite a bit about how things that get messed up in epic then get compensated in ritual. But is he almost trying to cleanse his own, or compensate for his own messing up?
Well, the most visible sign of Odysseus as a cleanser of his own polluted acts is, again, I have to fast forward to the towards the end of our Odyssey, which is where he literally fumigates the palace after slaughtering the suitors. And you might say, well, the suitors deserved what they got, but the point still remains that there are morally questionable things about how they were killed and how retribution happened after the killing of the suitors.
Again, we see a sort of retribution when we first see him. We're seeing a sort of retribution happening. I'm thinking particularly of Odyssey 5, where he's literally stripped of everything.
Yes, he's reduced to zero, and even his nakedness is a kind of illustration of what is that saying that we say in English: clothes make the man. Well, then the man has been unmade. And again, I'm sorry that I'm fast forwarding, but in Odyssey 9, when Odysseus says that he is Utis, nobody, as a way of saving his life, when the Cyclops, the cannibalistic Polyphemus, asks him who he is, and he answers Utis, well, he saves his life, but he cancels his heroic reputation. He cancels, if I can put it in Iliadic terms, the glory of epic that you would think would be his just by virtue of the fact that he, not Achilles, is the one who conquered Troy. Achilles never succeeded in conquering Troy. And you might say he, by way of his body double Patroclus, saved the Achaeans from the fire of Hector, but neither Achilles nor his substitute, Patroclus, succeeded in capturing Troy. That was something that was done by Odysseus, and he did it by way of, let me say it crudely, brains, not by brawn. Let me say that crudely. In Greek, you would say he did it by way of mantis, cunning intelligence, and not by bia, or physical violence, which is, of course, what Achilles is best at. I feel so unsatisfied with all of my responses because these are just fragments that we have to kind of put together to get the whole picture, and we don't yet have the full picture. But these are very important questions, and at least I'm addressing the question and expressing my own inadequacy in being able to give a big picture answer yet.
Yes. Well, there is another question from a participant. How does phéme, something said, differ from aînos?
Well, let me make sure I have the first word correctly. The second word is aînos. What was the first word again?
Well, he wrote phéme, something said, from phéme, to say.
Oh, yes, famous and phéme and all those words that are derived from a root, which linguists who study Indo-European languages would immediately compare with Latin for fari, fatus, which just means to say, but in other situations has deeper meanings. In a way, what stumps me about the question is that the participant here is comparing one word, which is a specialized way of saying, that word is aînos, with another word, which is also a specialized word of saying, and these are two different registers of specialization. In the case of phéme, I'll use the first declension form of it. I think it would be more easy. Phéme, which is cognate with Latin fama, which in Latin should mean the thing which is said, but means fame, right? In Greek, in Homeric Greek, phéme is a special kind of language that must have at least two different meanings, and the deeper meaning has to be reinforced in some special way. So I admit that there are parallelisms with aînos, because aînos too has more than one meaning, and one of them is for the superficial, the other is for the ones who are more deep in their thinking, in their moral hardwiring, and in their emotional predispositions. Whereas phéme is dependent not on the qualifications of the one who's listening, it depends on whether the cosmic structure will approve or not approve the meaning of the word. And that's why if you say something and it means just one thing, you need a guarantee by way of another sign, like, I don't know, the thundering of Zeus. That's going to happen later on in the Odyssey, where you hear something and you say, ooh, that has a deeper meaning, but I've got to get another guarantee. And then the guarantee will be, at least in one case in the Odyssey, that Zeus sends a thunderbolt from the clear blue sky. Oh, okay, then that guarantees the meaning. So it has to do with the comprehension that's dependent on divine agency, whereas aînos, I guess, depends on your own qualifications, whether you're, intellectually, morally, and emotionally to understand something. Sorry for that long-winded answer to a very good question, but the question deserves a long-winded answer.
Next, one of the participants said Odysseus might be like a game player playing on Nintendo. Every time he fails, game over, he regenerates himself, replay to take new steps. His mental power and his continuous action is unlike Achilles. Instead of staying away, he is trying. So his mental power is more scary than physical power, because for us to understand, is it unexpected?
Oh, I like that. And could I say that if we follow a very smart book by Lisa Raphels, Raphals, the title of which is Knowing Words, the varieties of intelligence that are explored by way of the word metis don't even exhaust all that is there. And in the case of Lisa's book, she found that even though Chinese traditions are, of course, historically unrelated to Greek traditions, you can get a better idea of female intelligence by looking at Chinese myths. And you get a less good idea by looking at Greek myths. Now, maybe that's because people who study Greek myths haven't gone deep enough yet. And I think that may be the best way to understand why you need to compare more looking outside of Greek traditions when it comes to metis. But I'm saying metis is a very, very, very complex word. We translate it as intelligence or cunning intelligence, but think of the fact that Zeus, before he became the lawfully wedded husband of Hera, had been the lawfully wedded husband of two previous goddesses. And let's not even get to the first one. We don't have time today at this moment. But the second one, Metis, is the incarnation of intelligence. She is the goddess of intelligence. And when she gets impregnated by Zeus, it is clear that if she gives birth to a son, then the son will overthrow the divine father Zeus. So what does Zeus do? As we know from Hesiodic traditions, he swallows his pregnant wife and then gives birth to the son he never had, who is the daughter Athena, who will never marry in the version that we have, and therefore who is, how shall I say it, no longer eligible as a male successor, even indirectly to Zeus. And as some of you may already know in the myth, for a father to take over the physical process of giving birth is complicated, to say the least. And in the case of Zeus, it happens by way of, what shall I call it, a divine episiotomy, where Hephaestus, the god of artisans, takes an axe and splits his head in two, and out of the head of Zeus comes Athena, who is the daughter of Zeus and Metis, except that Metis has been absorbed by Zeus. Therefore, the gender of Athena changes from what would have been male to female. The gender of the noun Metis is feminine, so that's good. And then she becomes the executor of the father's intelligence, at least for Athenians, and probably for other Greek speakers as well. Ooh, that took an eternity, and I'm still just scratching the surface. So I hope I'm not discouraging the participants. The Odyssey is so complex, and there are so many subtexts. I'm not saying there weren't lots and lots of subtexts in the Iliad, but it's just a very challenging pair of epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey. And I'm so glad we're discussing only once during this session, because there's so much for us still to do. I hope I haven't discouraged anybody. I hope everybody sees how interesting this is, and how even somebody who spent a whole lifetime on the Odyssey still finds it very, very, very difficult to try to get the big picture within a few minutes. It's just impossible.
I think the number of questions and observations that we're getting from the participants shows they're really engaging with this and trying to get it. And it's hopefully don't think they'll find it discouraging so much as encouraging that there's always more to find.
Yes. Yes.
And so they're looking also at things like some of the descriptions. Thinking about his perhaps good press. He's described as enduring and full of sorrow, and these sorts of things. Might that have elicited sympathy, or was his behaviour considered as bad or exciting, or what would have been the maybe the reactions of the ancient Greeks? Do we know?
Yeah, I think that the participant whose views were reported by our dear Hélène about the Nintendo player, even though I'm not an expert at Nintendo, I do understand how Odysseus, when he gets the signal, game over, can start the game all over again. If I understood the participant right. And in a way, a beautiful symbol for that is the spark. When he is, again, in Odyssey 5, shall we say, covering himself with leaves after he survives the dangers of drowning at sea, and he finally gets to Mother Earth again. And at that point, he is compared to a single spark that is all that is left of a fire that can still be the germ of a new fire, and he can reignite. And for us humans who suffer so many disappointments in our lives, that reignition is something that is very, very, I don't know, vivifying, don't you think?
Wow, yeah, that is so beautiful. I love that image.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So there's a lot of good there. And the same professor who said that Odysseus gets a bad press in almost everything but the Odyssey also said that all humanity is divided into Iliad and Odyssey people, specifically Achilles and Odysseus. And then when we students asked him, well, whom do you choose? And he says, I don't know. I shift from one to the other every day. So there you are. We need the Iliad and the Odyssey together.
That sounds like he's an Odysseus person to me, if he's shifting
well, yes, you could say that. I think he would have said that on some days. On some days.
Well, I have to break in here as the referee and call time on our play with words and epic themes.
On our Odyssey an hour.
Yes, it will be an hour soon enough. So thanks, Greg. Thanks, you three.
Thank you all. Thank you. And thank you, participants, for staying with us. And don't give up now. It's not game over.